all of these cooked in little templates you can select from, but some of them have these kind of structural settings to them that will change how you interact with the site. So for example, if I click on maybe one of the ones that has like a little split screen, so this wireframe L823, you can see it's got this kind of like funny structural thing where you can scroll on the left-hand side of the page versus scroll on the right-hand side of the page. And this can be a little bit trickier to change or play around with once you've selected a format. A big part of setting up an online portfolio is kind of thinking about almost the UX design of the experience that you're looking to create. The key things that you really want to keep in mind when you're thinking about the basic structure of your website, first and foremost, is actually, does it load quickly? I think that's something important to consider, because if it takes even a little bit longer than that usual kind of second or two of friction to load, a lot of times people get angry and don't wait. Not angry, but our attention spans are truly shot. So if you're finding any one of these templates is taking a little bit longer with your content to load, I would maybe shove that one off to the side. It's also important to think about the type of content that you're interested in introducing onto your web portfolio. We can chat a little bit about images, like the types of images and file sizes that you might want to keep an eye on when you're uploading to the web. And we can also talk about some things that people are looking at in terms of sustainability on the web, because every time you're loading a website that's using energy, often some obscure place in the world. I think we talk about water use and AI a little bit more now than we used to in the past, but it's good to think about how much effort or kind of whatever power load you're putting on the system, depending on the structure of website that you're using. Cargo isn't a super great example, but we can talk about some other alternatives that are really like low carbon footprint style websites, which are quite interesting. But anyway, that's one of the main things you want to think about. How quickly is it loading? Secondly, think about the format in which people are going to be viewing it on. So most of the time when you're working on this kind of thing, you're going to be using your laptop to put it together. And so it will probably look great on a laptop context. But it's also good to think about how it would appear on mobile or on a phone. So some of these websites look really, really great in a laptop kind of horizontal frame, but when you pivot to a cell phone or an iPad or something, whatever old people use to look at portfolios when they're hiring, you never know kind of what device someone's going to be on, and that can really change the look and feel of a website, as well as the scale of objects and text that you're including in your layouts as well. So content you're uploading, how quickly it's loading, and then how people are going to kind of interact or be able to use it in coming from different environments. So if I grab one of these random templates, is there a template that you guys like? Is there a popular one? No? Okay, that's okay. I'm just going to grab, let's try, this one looks fine. Wireframe Y843. So I can click this one from the list, use this template button in the upper left-hand corner. It's making a new site. And now I've got a nice little empty spot for me to plug things into. So this is just showing up in my personal little repository of websites. I've got my own personal website, some old DM websites I've put together. But you should be able to access any of the templates that you've saved from your own little personal repository here. So I'll click on this little empty box. I'll hit edit. There's a little edit button in the top left-hand corner. But you can also see that there's a little button to toggle between a desktop view and a mobile view. So this is helpful for getting a better sense of how things might sit in different contexts or environments. A lot of cargo websites are what's called responsive, so they're designed with the ability to shift and change to different dimensions of device. A lot of devices are not quite an iPhone, not quite a desktop, but something weird in between. And responsive design is something that shifts and changes to suit whatever kind of dimensional environment it's sitting in. Websites that aren't responsive are maybe a little bit more fixed, and so you might find that they sit in weird places on a device or show up at a weird scale. So we might be able to look at some examples of that in a second. But for now, I'm just going to hit edit. So top left-hand corner, edit button. And this is what the cargo interface looks like, regardless of whatever template you're using. You're going to see there's a bar up at the top with a few editing tools that are specific to this individual page. And then over on the right-hand side, this is kind of where we're controlling the overall global settings. So the first thing to note is there's this little globe icon on the right-hand side here. If you hover over it, it says publish. This is our publish button. So this is kind of like the big green or red go button. So if we don't publish, quote unquote, publish our website, this is basically like saving it or updating it in a public facing way. All of the changes that you make to this template are not going to show up. So you could spend hours and hours putting your website together, but if you don't come to this little globe icon and hit the big publish button, nothing is going to show up publicly for other people. This is also where you can start to label your website, give it a name. Maybe I'm going to call this one Portfolio under site name. And you're also going to see here the URL. So this is the website. This is the www dot for how you can send this content to other people. By default, it's going to have this .cargo.site appended to the end of it. That's just because we're using a nice free kind of website builder environment for it. So this is their little piece of advertising that they're going to stick on the end. So it's going to say .cargo.site. But you can change what comes before that. So maybe I can call this Sarah's Portfolio. Wahoo.cargo.site. I'll hit OK. And now it's uploading or updating what that www dot is going to show up as in the top left-hand corner. So I can go to this new URL that I've created, Sarah's Portfolio, wahoo.cargo.site. You can check how it looks in another tab. Maybe you grab like an incognito tab so you're not logged into anything. But since I haven't hit publish, it might not make the necessary changes that I want to see. It looks like it automatically kind of like published and updated my website when I changed the URL. So I'm in an incognito tab right now. I can see that it's got my nice blank template portfolio for me here at the website that I've specified. So Sarah's Portfolio, wahoo.cargo.site. If you're interested in changing that domain, so changing how this little end piece sits, so by default it's going to say .cargo.site. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I don't think you have to worry about changing that. Some people go ahead and buy their own kind of personal domains. One thing I will flag to you, because I have made this mistake, I ended up hunting down and subscribing to the domain for my personal name, so my first last name .com. If you don't retain ownership of that domain, sometimes it will, so there was like, I did this when I was a student, and then a couple years later I was like, I don't really need that anymore. I don't need to like subscribe to that domain with my first and last name on it. It goes into this big sea of available domain names, and people all over the world like to scoop those up and then try to sell it back to you if you haven't kept on top of the subscription for it. So if I go to, actually, maybe close your eyes. I don't know what's going to be on this website. If I go to sarahklim.com, dangerous site. So it's not even going to let me go to my own website because someone else scooped it up. Every once in a while I get these creepy little emails that are like, do you want to buy sarahklim.com? So maybe don't purchase a domain for yourself unless you intend to keep it up and keep up with the responsibility of carrying that forward. That would just be my little piece of lessons learned. But for now, while you're a student, .cargo.site is more than fine. People see this extension and they're like, oh, okay, that's a cargo portfolio website. That's great. So don't worry about this. Maybe just change the front part here from It's probably a random series of numbers. You can change it to your name. You can change it to whatever sounds nice and professional for you. But these are the two main things that you're going to want to set up first. If you do end up purchasing a domain that you want to steward for the next several years and keep your eye on, there is an add a domain button up here. So if you have like a specific address you want people to go to, there's a big add a domain button, and it can kind of walk you through the process of like purchasing or transferring over an existing domain. If you already have a website, you can transfer the name of that website to this one, all that good stuff. But we're going to skip that for today because it's actually not important. The main two things are, what is the www dot that you're sending people to? And the other thing is just the name of the site. So where it says site name, this doesn't change anything in the URL necessarily, but this is probably going to change what shows up when you are in a new tab. So like if I look at the name of the tab for the Miro that we're in, you can see that it says the title of our Miro Bard, Arch 517 2026. Whereas in my portfolio tab here, if I change this site name, it's just going to change what shows up kind of in the top of that tab. It's also going to change up what shows up if it's in something like a search engine, or so if I change this to Sarah's pretty portfolio, this is what's going to show up in the like Google search results if it does get kind of indexed in a search engine. Again, you have to publish those changes if you want those to push through and update anything. So anytime you're making any changes to your CarGirl website, you're going to have to hit the big publish changes button. You can also hit Control or Command P to do that. So that's kind of like hitting save, essentially. Only other things that I'll flag on this little globe tab here are the favicon. Do you guys know how to pronounce that? I don't know. Anyway, it's just this little icon that shows up, again, next to the title of your website in kind of the top of the tab or whatever that you're going to be using. It's just like a little picture. So you can see here, Miro has like that little yellow M. Cargo by default has this little blue globe. You can change that picture if you want it to be something else. By default, it'll be that globe, but you can change it to whatever kind of JPEG or image that you want to change it to. Again, just a tiny little thing. It doesn't really show up anywhere other than the top of a tab that you have this open in. We're going to skip the rest of these, but the only other things that I'll note is that there is also an option to make your site private if you like. So this just keeps it from being indexed on search engines, which you may want to think about in the future. But another strategy, if you want to keep your content your own and out of prying eyes, I would probably recommend turning on password protection. So there's a little button down at the bottom, also on this globe tab here, that says enable password protection. And this one, you can just type in whatever kind of code you want. Maybe I'll make my password hello and hit save password. And what that means is anytime that you send the link to your website to anybody you want to show it to, so I'll go to Sarah's portfolio, wahoo.cargo.site, it's going to prompt them for a password first before showing them any content, which is kind of a nice thing to consider depending on how you are looking at or how you're thinking about your personal information being out there on the web. Oh, I'm on Craigslist. Let's go. So if I go to Sarah's portfolio, wahoo.cargo.site now, you can see it'll prompt me to enter a password. And so if you're sending your portfolio via email or text message or something, you can send them the link and then give them the password in that email. So in this case, it's hello. They'll hit enter and now they have access. Whereas before, if they don't have that password, they won't be able to access any of your content. I think it's wise to be thoughtful about the kinds of information we're putting on the internet in the year of our Lord 2026. I think I might get a little more conspiracy theory with you later in the semester about the nature of quote unquote AI and where that's going. But I think it's good to keep a close eye on the kinds of things that are public information and searchable about you attached to your name. So anyway, just something to think about. You can enable password protection. This is also great for if you have sensitive client work. So you may not have any content like this now, but sometimes you'll work with clients in the future and you might be under NDA. A lot of contracts are increasingly under NDA depending on the scale and size of a project and also the nature of the client. So a lot of Apple projects, for example, you'll just see fruit company or something, or like banana company, and that means Apple. So you may not be able to share your portfolio, specific parts of it publicly, but you can hint at it and then give certain people access to specific pieces if they're under NDA. But do be careful in the future if you do end up signing NDAs on any of the work that you're doing. Just be cognizant, especially with online content, because it is so indexable and searchable. Who knows what the legal landscape of the future will look like. So anyway, just proceed with caution. But that's this big mega globe publish tab. The big TLDRs are change the name of the website and make sure that you hit publish after any major changes. The next little page that we have here, the next column down, this is a global setting for all of the pages that are going to be in your web portfolio. I know that we haven't been able to set up any separate pages for now, but this little page icon here that says default page settings, this is going to change the basics for every single page that is populated within your portfolio. So this is really good stuff to take a look at. The main settings here are the width, so how much of the screen does your content take up? You can click and drag this little slider. For the most part, you're probably not going to use this too much if you're playing with existing templates, but you can use this to your advantage with kind of building your own kind of custom shapes and forms. These little icons to the right here are just controlling it's just the justification of the page. So whether it is snapping to the left-hand side, the middle, or the right-hand side, that's what the width is controlling. And again, this is going to populate through and change all of the pages on your website. If you want to change just one specific page, you don't want to apply these width settings to everything in your whole portfolio stack, there's also another little page button up at the top. So we were working with the one on the right-hand side here, but if you just want to apply to one specific layout, this kind of single page version, the same icon, but just one on its own, has the exact same settings, but in this case, they'll only apply to the specific page that you are touching or editing at this moment. If you make any changes to the defaults, you'll see that you will get this little blue diamond show up next to your specific setting that you're playing with. That blue diamond just means that you've changed something from the default that is cooked into that template. If you want to change it back to the basic or standard, you can just click on that little blue diamond and it'll bring it back to whatever it was before, the kind of default setting. So feel free to play around with things, choose how they look, and then if you freak out and you don't know what you did, press the little blue diamond and it'll bring you back to the default. So width is a pretty obvious setting to control. That's controlling how much of the page the content specifically is going to take up. Padding is essentially, it's kind of like wearing hockey pads on the side or something. You can see it's just kind of like a little border or boundary. If I crank up the padding, it's starting to add kind of like a thicker white rim around the content of my page. This is helpful for generating some nice kind of white space in certain layouts. Websites are much like, it's kind of shocking actually how much designing the layout of a website is like designing the layout of a page. There's a lot of the same considerations that you're going to want to be thinking about. One of them is principally white space. So making sure that the images that you're showing have enough kind of room to breathe so that they are easy to read and understand. And thinking about white space as kind of its own object that you're playing around with the layout as well. We'll talk about different kind of compositional and graphic design strategies over the next couple of classes. But for now, just know that padding is controlling the thickness of this kind of white boundary. And you can control that independently from each side, so the top, bottom, right, and left, by clicking this little dot, dot, dot over on the right-hand side. That'll let you control, like maybe let's say I want a really thick white band at the bottom of my page. I can come down to where it says padding bottom and then crank this value up independently of all of the other different values. So you can control these on their own, the bottom, the top, the left, and the right. And again, if you make any changes you're not stoked about, you can just press the little blue diamond to kind of bring things back to the default setting. Same deal with the height. So width is controlling how wide your page is. Height is controlling how tall or how much vertical space it takes up. This is something important to think about because it'll have different impacts on a desktop view versus a mobile view. So when this little 100% height button is checked on, that means that no matter how much kind of content we have going on here, it's going to fill up the whole page, that kind of entire like landing page view. It'll kind of center everything and make sure that all that you're seeing is the content that we have at hand here. If you uncheck it, then it'll just rely on the height of that actual content to fill up the page. So this one is a little bit weird to explain, but it gets more intuitive as you play around with it. So definitely try checking and unchecking this 100% height option. And then same deal, there's a little bit of an option to align whether you want things to snap to the top, the center, or the bottom of your little desktop viewer here. Inset, I don't remember how that is different from padding, but I'm sure it is in some magic way. Page background is where we can change the color of the background that we're working with. So if you are interested in a nice flat color sitting behind your images, you can change that under page background. But you can also have a content background. So it doesn't just have to be like a solid color fill in the back of your page. You can also click this little empty circle where it says content background. Actually, maybe I have that confused. So content background will focus on just the specific little piece of information that you have selected. So if I have this little kind of index of images, this gallery of images here that I have selected, you can change this specific little chunk of information to be a different color than the rest of the website if you like. There's also a way to have an image or video as the background of your web page as well. I don't remember exactly where that setting is. Maybe I'll find it along the way, but this can have a nice kind of cool effect. I've done this before for different sort of architecture websites. It's a common thing you'll see is like a big image landing page kind of as the background of your web page. The only thing to keep in mind with that is that it really bumps up the load time of the web page. The larger the image, the higher fidelity that image or video. I'm seeing a lot of video as like a common landing page thing. I was looking at Studio Juiced Scrutins the other day, and they have a really great website, but it just took like so long to load because they have these kind of cool videos as their main loading page. Very cool, and it works well in this context. But when I was looking at it at the airport yesterday, it didn't load at all, and I got really pissed off, and I didn't end up looking at it. So something to keep in mind: the cool factor versus the speed factor is very real and something you'll be up against. So you can change the background to be a solid color. You can change the background to be an image, but I don't remember how. Maybe we'll come back to that one later. And then page border, that is exactly what it sounds like. You can add a nice little band of color if you so choose to the outside of your website or content. So that's the local page settings. Again, if you want to bring anything back to how it was before, just keep clicking the little blue diamonds until they're all gone, and then it'll be back to business as usual. In terms of setting up actual individual pages and having them link to each other, all of that important kind of structural stuff lives under the tab up in the top right-hand corner. It'll have a different title depending on which page you're clicking on, but this is our little pages navigation. So the button you want to click is not this little hand icon, but the one just to the left of that, the little hamburger menu there. So this is going to be a list of all of the separate individual pages that exist inside of our portfolio website. And things get a little complicated because there's ways to overlay information in different pieces of your website on top of each other. So you can see in this example, it looks like we have 5 separate pages, but in reality, some of this stuff is actually layered over top. So for example, this little header option here, that is referring specifically to this little chunk up at the top that says cargo demo. It's got some funky little random numbers in there, and then some information about index or info. So that's what this specific little header page is talking about. I'm going to delete this one for now because we'll come back to this one. It can get a little bit confusing in the interim, so I'm just going to delete that whole thing. And instead, we can look at the existing pages in this little template here. So you can see over on the right-hand side, there's little icons that might pop up depending on the type of page that we have established. I'm just gonna kind of delete all of these extra little ones for now, and we can kind of build them back in. You don't have to do this at all, but it's just for clarity of instruction here. So I'm just gonna bring it down so we only have one page to start with, our kind of basic images page. And you can see that at least only one of your pages in your little stack over on the right-hand side will have a little house icon on it. The house icon means that that's your home page. That's your landing page. That's what people are going to be brought to first of all. And if you click on the little house, you can see there's an option to have it be homepage for desktop and mobile, or just desktop, or just mobile. So this is something to think about when you are designing or thinking about different contexts that your portfolio might appear in. You can toggle between a desktop preview and a mobile preview using the little icon of a computer and a cell phone. Just up in the top little band here, that lets you toggle between 2 different views. So it'll give you a good understanding of the difference between the 2 contexts. So you can see on my desktop view, with the example I have right now, it's sitting quite nicely in the center of the page, and it fills up the whole screen, and it looks like a nice, cute little solid package. But when I toggle over to the mobile setting, you can see it's not taking up or sitting kind of as in the same direction or flow as the desktop page. So that's something to consider. Just try toggling between those 2 views on a regular basis and see how that shakes up your content. And so that's where this desktop and mobile setting might come in handy. Sometimes you'll design something and it looks really great on desktop and it looks just terrible on mobile. So you can set up multiple pages for different contexts. So maybe I have an images page or a home page for my desktop specifically. So this is what people on a computer are going to be brought to. And maybe I have a copy or a duplicate of this one that I set to be my home page just for mobile. So I can have this one set as homepage just for mobile. If you ever want something to be set as the homepage and it is not currently, so maybe I'll make a brand new page just to show, for example, new page. You just have to click the little ... in the right-hand corner and come down to set as homepage. From here, you can choose desktop, mobile, or desktop and mobile. So that's what the difference between them is. It's basically just your cargo is going to read the type of device that it's sending its website to, and it'll make the call, is this a standard desktop? If so, we can send them to this page. If it's not, if it's some sort of weird, funky mobile device, we'll send them to the mobile version instead. By default, you can just kind of stick with desktop and mobile, send both types of devices to one page, and design for both kind of contexts with one layout. But if you need a little bit more control, that's where that option exists to choose between the 2. So that's our homepage. I've got our nice untitled page. If you want to rename a page or call it something else, so I've got a nice empty page here. I'm going to call this one home. You can rename it just by double clicking on the text in our nice little pages stack. So double click and type in whatever you want. On a landing page, some things to consider. You can think about what you want to bring people to first. So again, this is kind of like it's almost like an architectural experience you're designing for people in some ways. There's kind of a choreography to how you want to bring people through your information, your work, and the sequence between the two. So you can think about, I'll share some examples maybe later on, but some people like to start with information about them. So who am I as a person? Who are you dealing with? What kind of person has sent you this information? Sometimes a homepage is a good place to have that kind of context. So some really high level, like, hi, my name is Sarah. I'm a designer. I work at XYZ. This is the kind of things I'm interested in. You can lead with that kind of information, or you can lead with your work. I think it depends on the type of person you are, who you're targeting, their attention span in general. A lot of people choose to lead with images of their work. I think we're kind of a visual culture in a lot of ways. So you can start with pictures and images of the things you're trying to share. So leading with that kind of visual intrigue, and then having information about you be kind of a secondary double click through kind of experience. For me personally, I think I chose to do kind of both. I'll show you my personal thing if it wants to go. Hello, come on. Cargo.site. Okay, maybe I broke it. That's okay. So I tend to think that people don't like to double click through. Let me try this one. Sarah Clem. So I just ended up putting like a tiny little blurb about myself up at the top with some basic links, and then had a list of projects down below that. I've since taken that largely off of the public internet for various reasons. If you ever want to navigate to, let's say you've published your website and you want to make some edits to it, you can type in the link to your website and then just type in admin after. So the link to your website, mine is sarahclam.info/ and you can type in admin, and that should bring you to your Cargo interface for that website. It might kind of force you to log in one more time, but it's a nice little shortcut for navigating where you need to go. And I'll show you the structure that I've ended up with here. So I've got a home page. You can see I've got my nice little home house icon. And in previous iterations of this, I also had a list of projects. So kind of an index of projects that would show up down below this kind of preliminary piece of information about me. So there's just like a little blurb about myself, and then it goes into a list of projects that I've worked on. I've found that people are quite visual, so it's good to hit them with a picture of what you're dealing with first. There's quite a few websites you might come across where it's just kind of like a text list of projects. I found that to be a little bit less effective because people don't read. People will choose not to read if they don't have to, and so it's usually better to give people a picture of something that you're dealing with so that they can make a more intuitive, high-level intuition of whether or not that's something they want to click on. I think this is maybe an older iteration of a website that I've built, but sometimes it's also helpful to have just a little bit of descriptive text about the project that you're working with. So I have all of these little kind of preview little boxes, previews for projects set up as individual little pages here inside of my little page browser. So I've got my home page and I've got an index of projects here. And this is one way to go about it. So you can set up individual little pages. If I go back to my empty option here, oh, it's gonna make me, there we go. So if I come back to my nice little empty example, I've got my blank homepage. I can either start adding new pages underneath it. So I can make a new page. Maybe I'll call this one Project 1. I can add in some content into this one. For now, maybe I'll just type in hello, Project 1. And you can see that that exists as its own little page in its own little world. I can come to the home page and my Project 1 disappears. So maybe I'll type something. I've got my little home page. I'll type something in here, home page. And if I toggle between the two here, you can see that they're not connected at all. By default, I've got my home page, I've got my Project 1 page, and between the two of them, there's no interconnection. They exist separately. They're on separate pages and they don't link to one another. So this is something we can change depending on how we set up the structure of our little pages over on the right-hand side. So by default, they're not going to be connected. There's going to be no relationship in between them, and you might be confused about how to move from one page to another page. And that's where we can come over to the ... in the top right-hand corner here and choose this option that says Stack Pages. So what this is going to do is it's going to take all of your content in your page list here, and it's going to stack it on top of each other in a nice little sequence for you. So if I come over and choose Stack Pages, you can see what happens now is I have my home page. Up at the top, it's just this tiny little band, and then it links to Project 1. So we've got homepage, Project 1, and then my nice little images page down below that. And if you keep scrolling, it's just kind of scrolling through these various pages in a vertical sequence. So that's what a stack is. You can see the icon for that is just like a little layer cake, essentially, little cube. So when pages are stacked, it lets you kind of scroll through them one on top of each other. And the order of the pages in this little sequence here, so in my pages browser, determines the order in which they show up. So if I drag Project 1 to the top of the list, you can see now it says Project 1 up at the top of my site. And then the home page comes below that. And vice versa. So the order of operations really matters here. Whatever sits on top is going to determine kind of the order in which that stack is shown. So that's one way to help kind of stitch different pieces of content together. Maybe you have a project page here, and you have all of your projects kind of stacked one on top of another. You can duplicate pages, again, just by kind of clicking the little ... on the right-hand side and choosing Duplicate. So I can keep duplicating my projects if I so choose, and now they're showing up in this little list. I've got a project, a project, a project. These are technically separate pages, but since they're stacked, they're showing up in one big list. That's one way to deal with things. Right now we have our whole website set up to stack all of the pages together. So every single page that we add in is going to get added into our list, our big stack. It's just going to keep kind of piling projects on top of each other. That's one way to do it. But you can also add one more kind of layer of organization to control which projects are stacked versus which ones kind of exist independently, which pages you have to kind of click through to navigate through to. So I'm going to turn off this stacking effect for a second. You can do that either by coming back to our little ... in the top right hand and unchecking stack pages, or you can also just click on the little layer cake icon and uncheck stack pages. When we do that, then we're brought back to this view where it's just one page at a time. All we're seeing is one piece of content at a time. They all exist independently of each other, and there's no kind of linking between them. There's another layer of organization we can introduce here, and that's called a set. So we can establish a set of pages. And this is kind of like a little group or subset that then makes it easier to control which projects are stacked versus which ones exist independently. So maybe for my home page, I want that one to exist on its own. I want it to be its own piece of work. But I've got all of these project pages, and maybe I want those ones to stack on top of each other. So I can create a new set. I'll come into the top right-hand corner up to my little ... and choose New Set. And you can see what this one does. It's just like in your file browser when you make a new folder. I've got a cute little folder icon. It'll prompt you for what you want to call this set. Maybe I'll call this one Projects. And now I can drag all of the pages into this set that I want to exist together as a little entity. So I'm going to drag all of my project pages into my projects set. Again, I just have a lot of copies of that one project page. And again, they're still existing independently, even though they live in this kind of little folder together. They exist in this set as one piece. They still exist independently, but you can turn on stacking for this independent or special kind of set that we've identified. So I can come over to the ... on the right-hand side of my little folder and choose Stack Pages. And now it's going to stack all of those individual project pages, but only the ones inside of that folder. So we've got that little layer cake icon on the right-hand side, and that is stacking up all of the pages that exist inside of my little set or folder that we've put together. The home page is still separate. We can still click on that one, and that's a separate girl. But our projects pages are all stacking one on top of each other. Does that make sense? Okay. It's kind of a weird idea about displaying information, but it'll become more clear to you as you play around with it and move things around. It's not super clear what's happening right now because all we have in our little page so far is just pieces of text, but we can add in any kinds of information that we want into a page. So by default, it'll just give you kind of like a little cursor in the top left-hand corner, and you can type whatever you want. But you can also add in a few different types of information. So there's a big add button, a big plus. And from here, you can add in the main kind of types of information that you might be interested in including are columns. So if we click on this little columns option here, you can see what it gives me is a little blue box with a dashed line in the middle. And this is basically just giving you the option to start plugging in content. So I can type in all kinds of junk on the left-hand side, but it's introduced a column on the right-hand side as well. So I can click on the right half of my little column structure here and start typing in too. So this is just giving you more control about the layout of your page. You can add in as many columns as you like. So by default, it'll just give you 2, but if you keep hitting the little plus in the top right-hand corner there where it says columns, plus, 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 you can add all kinds of columns of information into your site. And this is how you can start getting a little bit more control over the layout of what's happening on your website. And this is a good way to start introducing other content. So most of the time, you're probably going to be plugging in a lot of images into your website. And there's a few basic ways to do that. You can click and drag. I'm a big click and drag girl, so you can navigate to any kind of image that you have. Maybe I'll use this little screenshot. It's a PNG. You should be able to upload PNGs and JPEGs. I don't know about PDFs. I don't think I've done that. But you can click and drag and drop any type of image into any one of your columns that you have going on here. So I dragged and dropped my little image. You can see it's sitting just inside this one column that I have. And you can click and drag to change the width of those columns. There's an underlying little grid of blue that you'll see pops up when you start to try and click and drag the width of those columns. So I can click and drag those columns around to try to make my image bigger. You can also click on your image and drag the size of the image just using that little black arrow that shows up in the bottom right hand corner. So you can click and drag to make that one a bit bigger. Once you hit kind of the bounds of the column width, so after a certain point I won't be able to make this image any bigger because I just have too many columns. There's too much blank space being preserved in my nice little column structure. So you can always come back and delete columns that you aren't keen on just by pressing the little minus button in the top right hand corner. And you can go back and forth clicking and dragging the width of each column, adding columns, subtracting columns, all that good stuff. And this is one good way to add in some structure and have your images sit nicely next to some text about those images. Maybe I want to type something about this drawing in the column to the left. Oops. This drawing is very nice and I did it. And you can hit publish and you're good to go. You're on the internet. And so this is a project page. It exists separately from my other projects. So I can click and drag this project to exist in different order in relation to those other project pages that I have going on here. Since they're all stacked, they'll just show up one on top of each other. So columns are a great way to add in information. There's also another way to add in lots of images, which is really helpful. So maybe I'll go to another project. I'll just grab a different page here. And I'll click add, and instead I'll add in a gallery. So a gallery is very similar to if you've ever used Squarespace. It's basically just a way of handling a lot of images at once. So I'll go to add and then gallery. And here it gives you a couple different options for how you want to handle a whole bunch of images. So we've got our basic grid. So this option will take all of the images that we feed it and show them in a really regular, organized grid. Columnized will respect the proportions of those images a little bit more, but keep them within a typical kind of column structure. Slideshow does exactly what it sounds like. It'll just kind of scroll through a whole bunch of images that you feed it one at a time. And maybe I'll play with freeform to start. This one's kind of fun. So under add gallery, I'll choose freeform. And this lets you input a whole bunch of images and then click and drag them around on your screen to whatever kind of layout that you think looks good. So all of these little gray boxes are floating independently. We can click and drag them around, resize them however we like. And then to add in images, we can come up to either click and drag things onto our screen. So I can try and click and drag my city building diagram into one of these empty boxes. Or you can also come over to the gallery button in the top right-hand corner. And sometimes there's an option to add in images here. Maybe they've changed that since. But you can toggle between the different types of gallery from this little top right-hand option here. So we can switch between a freeform layout and a grid layout very quickly. It will preserve whatever images you fed it. So if I keep feeding it all kinds of different, actually maybe the same picture, and we change the gallery type, it'll remember what you fed it, but you can switch between the different types of gallery very quickly here. So again, freeform just lets you kind of like click and drag to resize. Cargo is really annoying about images themselves. I don't think they've updated this recently, but they are really annoying about not being able to change the proportions or crop of your images very easily on their web builder. It's kind of like whatever you feed it is whatever is gonna exist. So for example, I have this nice little portrait sized box that I want to bring an image into. But if I click and drag in my little diagram, you can see it ignores those proportions that I had set up previously, and there isn't a good option for cropping or zooming in on that specific image to get those portrait proportions back. So this is one of my biggest gripes, I think, with the program, is there isn't a good way to crop those images. I think their reasoning for that is because they don't want to store the extra information outside of the crop. It's just like a lot of burden on the web storage system. But anyway, so that's kind of one really annoying thing. If you want something to be a certain proportion, you'll probably have to bring it into Photoshop, crop it to the dimension or proportions that you're interested in, and then bring it into Cargo from there, which is kind of a piss off. So if you're having trouble cropping stuff on your website, it's because you kind of can't, which is so annoying. But something to keep in mind, it's kind of forces you to pay attention to the integrity of your image, what you want to include or exclude. You just have to crop it beforehand. Every image that you upload into Cargo will exist in your quote-unquote library of images. So you can see there's a little icon of a mountain in the top right-hand corner here. And it's called Images and Files. And so any type of picture that you upload to Cargo will exist inside of your library. This makes it really easy to go to different pages. So if I go to my home page, for example, and I want to reuse that picture, I can come up to my library, click on my little mountain photo. There's no images on this page yet, but if we click on this button that says Library, it'll bring you back to a list of all of the different image types that you've used, or all of the different images that you've used across your whole website. So again, that was just our little, this is called Photos and Videos button, and then choose Library. And from here, you can click and drag any of the pictures you've used before onto your new pre-existing page. Oops. If you're struggling to locate an image on a page, it might be because you need to have a container for it, essentially. So if I have my nice little homepage and all that exists on it so far is some text, so any new blank page will just give you the option to start typing. If I want to click and drag an image from my library onto the page, you can see it's not easy for me to just like click and drag it around the page. I can't just move it somewhere else. Part of that is the way that the web builder is written and established. Part of that is the way that we have to specify information about how we want each image to sit. But the best way to deal with this is just to add it to some kind of container. So either host it in some columns. So maybe we can add some columns to our page. And if I want the image to sit kind of in this right third of the page, I can click and drag my image into some columns, and then it'll sit nicely over there. We can change the location by changing the width of those columns. So that's one option we have available. Another, maybe easier option is to go back in and add a gallery. So we can add a gallery. In this case, freeform is probably going to be the easiest to deal with. So I'll add a little freeform gallery here. I can delete all of the extraneous images if I just want one picture to deal with so far. From here, I can drag in my nice little diagram, and then you should be able to drag it kind of wherever you need on that page. So just little annoying things. An image on its own, you won't be able to relocate very easily. It'll always kind of snap to that top left-hand corner. But if you have it living inside of a series of columns or a gallery, then it becomes a lot easier to control or manipulate where it sits on the page. So if this is my home page, and this is where people are going to be directed if they are given the link to my website. So maybe I'll hit publish and we can double check in a little incognito tab what this might look like. I'll copy the link. You can also preview how your website is looking by clicking on the little finger in the top right-hand corner. There is a button for preview draft that will just kind of get rid of the little cargo editing tools on the side until you hit escape. So you can hit preview to get a little sneak peek of how it's looking, and then just hit escape if you want to get out of that little preview view. You can also click on the go to site button here, and this will open a new tab for you with your website in it. So this is my homepage. It's looking a little rough, a little dicey. And maybe I need to link to some of those other projects that I have existing in my website. Right now they're disconnected. I have that whole stack of projects that is sitting separately from my homepage. And there's a few ways we can do that depending on how you want to get from A to B. If we go back to my little, beep boop. So my Cargo web editor here, there's a few ways to navigate between different pages, different links. You can do it kind of manually, so I can come down to the bottom of my page, boop, boop, and add in a link to another part of my website. So maybe I want to link to project 1. So you can type out whatever you want that link to be called. I'll just type out project 1. So I have some little text down here. You can click this little link or chain icon up at the top. This is the same thing as adding in a hyperlink, like in an email. So from here, we can link to any other page inside of our little website ecosystem. So from my link option here, while I have the text selected, you can choose from our drop-down if we want to go to a specific project, a specific page. And if we click away from that, now that little piece of text is going to be a hyperlink. So if I preview it, I should be able to click on that little piece of text that I have highlighted, and it'll bring me to that new page, my stack of pages here. So essentially, we're just using hyperlinks to move from our homepage to any one of our other project pages. You can also, if you don't want to link to a specific project page, something that I've done on my website is you can add in, there's other navigational tools. So I can add in, maybe I'll type in some text that says next page down at the bottom here. I can select that, come up to my little hyperlink button, And instead of linking to a specific page, there's a drop down that says navigate. And from this little navigate drop down, we can control which page we want to go to from here. So there's a previous page button, a next page button, random page, scroll to top. So these are just like little specific moves that you can link to a certain piece of text to control how people move from page to page. So maybe instead of going to a specific project, I'll just have it go to the next page in my sequence. So I'll set this one up to be the next page. And now if I go to preview my little website, when I click on next page, it'll just bring me to whatever is next in that stack. So if I come back to my big project list, if we start on the home page, the next page in the sequence is just going to be whatever is directly below that. So from the home page, it's going to move to project 1, and then project 1, copy, 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 and so on and so forth. So that's just kind of a way to manually jump from one page to the next if you don't have them sitting in a nice kind of stacked scroll. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Any questions coming up so far? Okay, so,
If
oh
you
yeah.
decide to change the overall template,
Mm-hmm.
does any of this stuff port over to the new template?
So if you've built a bunch of stuff, like you've uploaded a lot of content in one template, and then you're like, actually, I hate it, and I want to use a different one. I think, unfortunately, it's not super easy to do that. I think that's probably why a little bit of care and love into choosing the template up front is probably wise. I don't know if there's a good option from within a website to change the template itself. I think that's maybe like a gap in their offering, because I do think you have to kind of exit out of whatever you've built so far and start a whole new site or context. I think once you select a template, it's kind of like starting from scratch. So all of your library, a lot of the things that you've built will be tricky to copy over. That said, I think I have had luck in the past, like literally copy pasting things from one tab to another tab. So if you have like a nice layout or piece of text, I have been able to select that whole kind of object or gallery, Control C, and then tab over into the other one in Control V. But that's a great point. I think investigating the template ahead of time is worth the trouble to make sure that you don't lose too much work if you realize it's not working for you. I'll definitely look into that though, because maybe that's changed in recent times. It seems like something they should be doing. Any other questions at this point? Okay, there's a whole bunch of other kind of aesthetic choices you can make from the options up at the top here. So by default, there's going to be some text choices, some font choices that have been made for you depending on the template that you're using. If you come over to this little text styles button over on the right hand side, this is controlling how text is going to appear across your website. This is very similar to paragraph styles in InDesign, or if you've used like Microsoft Word, just like different what are those called, like section headings or what have you. This is where we can control globally for our website how fonts are appearing and how they're looking. So under text styles, you'll see there's a big drop down up at the top here. Depending on the template, there might be a different number or type of text styles across your website. But the main ones that you're probably going to see, there should be a big heading. So a heading 1, 2, and 3. Those are just kind of like a hierarchy of headings across your website. And then body copy. And across all of these different options here, you'll be able to change the text and the font size. Those are going to be your main things you want to keep an eye on. And to control where those different styles, or basically like paragraph styles, are applied across your website, that exists kind of on the actual page with any specific text that you're working with. So I have my little chunk of text up at the top here that says homepage. Maybe I'll retitle it Sarah's Wonderful Website. And by default, this is using the really tiny little body copy, so tiny body text. This is small. I think we have to be respectful of people's different vision abilities. And so when in doubt, I would probably err on the side of larger text than smaller, just to make sure things are readable. Although I do struggle because a lot of times tiny little text like looks cool, but that's not legible. So at the very least, make sure that your name is large and visible. So I want to make sure that the title of my website in the upper left-hand corner here is nice and big. You can change whatever type of text, the style of that specific selection from this drop down up at the top here where it says text style. I'm going to change mine to a heading. So you can toggle through all of the different options that are cooked into whatever template that you're using. I'm going to choose heading 1. So this is the number 1 in my hierarchy. This is the biggest text style that I have going on here. But you can kind of move down the list and see what's cooked in by default. So you can see caption text is super tiny and actually white, so we're not going to use that. All of these different options here. To control how these actually look or apply across your website, so you can change the style that's applied to certain text, but in order to change what that actually looks like across your website, we have to come back over to our text styles button on the right hand side. So this is where we can toggle into, I can see I've got heading number 2 applied right now. So I can choose heading number 2 over in text styles, and here I can play around with how large that text is. Make it really big so they know it's really wonderful. Line height, this is just the spacing between those vertical lines of text, so that's quite important to pay attention to. And here I'll also nudge you to take a look at mobile. So toggle over between desktop and mobile view to make sure that your text is kind of sitting in a legible way. Here's an option where you might want to play around with possibly different pages for different views. So in this context, maybe I actually really like how my huge text is looking on desktop with this big chunky text. When I toggle over to mobile, this is not very legible. Sarah's Wonderful Website. So maybe this is an occasion where I want to set up a separate page that only shows up for people on mobile devices that uses a smaller font size, which we can control in the mobile settings view here. Mobile settings are actually really helpful because you don't necessarily need to make a whole other page. You can decrease the font size just for a mobile view in this little mobile settings window here, which is really great. So I can toggle between desktop and see that it's still maintained that massive, huge text on our desktop view. But when we pop into mobile, we can control the font size to be either larger or smaller, depending on what you want to work with. So all that to say, just make sure that you're kind of popping between the two views to make sure you have a handle on what's going on a slightly different interface. So again, this is where we're controlling the font that we're going to be using. Cargo actually has, one of the reasons to use Cargo is they have a really great text or font selection by default. A lot of the ones that they have cooked in are actually like really lovely and not too cheesy. So you probably can't really go wrong with any of the ones that are cooked into here by default. So it'll take some of the guesswork out for you on which fonts you might want to use. But you can also upload or add custom fonts down at the bottom of this list here. So there is, anytime you click on the font family that you're going to be using, you can scroll all the way down. There we go. And there should be a little option to add your own fonts if you so choose. We won't dig into that too much because I'd probably just encourage you to use one of the kind of pre-existing ones. The staff picks are usually pretty good. But you can think about just the character of the font that you want to use. Different fonts have different vibes, obviously. a serif font, so one with these little kind of curly cues, a little bit of extra flair on the edges of it. Those tend to have kind of a more like warmer, humanistic, maybe, what's the word? It's just like a warmer vibe versus a sans serif font. Architects tend to lean into the sans serif of it all because we think we're future forward and sleek and no excessive flair. So just pay attention to the vibe that you're sending out with your font. There is a little magic wand option that I think just does a nice little shuffle for you. I'm not sure if it does like recommended fonts or what have you, but you can click the magic wand if you want to try out different fonts from here. I think we're about out of time, so I'll stop there. But maybe we'll pick this up with just a few more notes on overlays and project pages on Friday. But if you are able to take a look through and choose kind of like a basic setup for your website that you want to carry through this semester, and drop it on your desk for this Friday, we'll chat about it in class then. I'll stick around if anybody has any questions, but hopefully that answers some kind of preliminary cargo woes for now.